I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to review RecXpress for Bank Services developed by Parasoft. Parasoft is based out of South Africa, and they do have installation of their products worldwide, somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 sites. They have been a developer for Sage 300 ERP for a number of years, and they do develop all of their products 100% in the SDK, which means their modules have the same look and feel and behave the same way that the Sage 300 ERP modules behave. We do support optional fields with this module, and it is compatible with all versions and editions. My name is Nancy Lavery, and we represent Parasoft here in North America. So we are a local resource for you with any questions you may have. Just to familiarize yourself a little bit with the Parasoft product line, they do develop a product called Cashbook, which is available in Europe and Asia, and it actually replaces the Sage Bank Services module that we're familiar with here in North America. So that product would be used for all payment transactions and receipt transactions that here would go through your AP or AR. They then developed a product called RecXpress, and that product is to be used specifically with Cashbook. And then in 2002, they developed RecXpress for Bank Services, which is the product that we'll be reviewing today, and it is the product that we represent here in North America. So RecXpress for Bank Services is going to automate the reconciliation process between your bank statement and transactions that have been done in Sage 300 ERP. It does require your 300 ERP system manager as well as bank services, and as I mentioned, we are compatible with the accounts payable and the accounts receivable module. It takes minutes to install and activate this product, and it is available for a 30-day trial period. So some of the features that are available to you with RecXpress for Bank Services: it will automate your reconciliation process, and over time you'll be able to get that automation up to somewhere in the 95 to 99 percentile in terms of accuracy and matching entries from your bank statement to transactions in Sage 300 ERP. It does replace the OFX import in Bank Services, and it comes with predefined bank formats. So these are free for you to set up if you happen to come across a bank format that is not currently available. However, the product is shipping right now with somewhere in the neighborhood of 155 predefined bank formats. Something that sets RecXpress apart from the Bank Services module is you do not require transaction codes in order to be able to import your bank statement, and I do believe that's a prerequisite for Bank Services on its own. So the way RecXpress will automate the process for you is you create a template, and this template will contain your rules for matching transactions. So it will determine things like your GL account, your AP or AR allocations. It will assist you in avoiding matching repetitive entries month after month. And it is flexible enough that it will allow you to apply new rules or add new rules to your template on the fly. So as you're going through your reconciliation process, in the same screen you'll be able to add new rules to your template. And this over time is going to reduce your reconciliation process. So it's probably going to take you hours versus days to do that reconciliation. Another great feature is that you can hide the bank balances. So if you have users that are responsible for doing the reconciliation process that you may not want them to know what the overall bank balance is, you can hide that information by utilizing the Sage 300 user interface customizations. So RecXpress for Bank Services uses 3 different ways to match transactions. It will initially look through the reference field and match transactions based on that reference. So that would be things like check numbers. And then after it's looked at the reference, it will start to look at amounts and dates. And it will then be able to match more entries based on that information. You can generate entries in bank services, accounts payable, and accounts receivable using RecXpress for bank services. So you can do things like allocate payments directly against your AP vendors or AR customers. You can create entries in bank services for things like your bank charges or adjustments. And you also have an option to automatically post transactions in Sage 300 ERP. A couple other features that are available with RecXpress for bank services that are not currently available in the standard bank services module is the ability to match multiple entries against one line of detail. So the one-to-many would be that you have one line of detail on your bank statement and multiple transactions in Sage 300 ERP. The many-to-one, of course, would be the opposite of that, where you have multiple lines on your bank statement and you'd like to match those against one entry in the bank services module itself. So the logic for reconciling for RecXpress for bank services, it will automatically match transactions based on the template that I mentioned earlier. And then anything that has no rule against it at all, it will actually go into a default category that RecXpress has called Other to be reconciled manually. And then you would go about that process of manually matching entries. And this is where you would begin to refine your template and add new rules on the fly as you go about matching these entries manually. You then can determine what happens with variances. There are going to be transactions that will match up based on the reference number. However, the amount may not be exactly correct. So it will match them, and it will put them into a category of matched with error. And you can then look at those variances, and you can generate adjustment entries automatically based on those variances. And as I mentioned, you can then generate batches. So first you would generate a batch for any unmatched entries. Then you can create an adjustment batch for those variance amounts. You can then generate batches for accounts receivable as well as accounts payable. And when you go to generate those batches, as you set up the rules in the template, you can choose how you would like to allocate those payments. So you can say, no, I don't want to allocate them. In other words, it will just create a prepayment in either your accounts receivable or your accounts payable. You can say, yes, I'd like to allocate it, which means that it will start with the oldest invoice and then start to apply those funds until the funds have been consumed. You can say, I'd rather it be an equal amount, where the system will go and look for a transaction that has an equal amount to the deposit that's been made or the check that's been issued. And then you can say, I'd rather look at the document number, in which case it will look in the description field. And ultimately, you can post all of this in bank services. So we'll move over to the software now and have a look so you can get an idea as to what this software will look like. And anyone that's frantically trying to write down that information, I will post this slide again at the end of the presentation. So RecXpress, we can see two options here for RecXpress that do embed themselves up under the bank services module. And when I open the RecXpress transactions, I then will choose whatever my bank is. And this is the banks that you have set up currently in your Sage 300 ERP. Now, once I chose that bank, we can see that it brought in a reconciliation description as well as a template and a default code. So the first time you use RecXpress for bank services, you will need to create a reconciliation description, a path for your template, and assign the default code, which effectively is your bank format. And then every time after that, when you choose the bank code, it will just automatically bring that information in for you. I can see these first two columns represent information that is currently in my Sage 300 ERP. So I can see my deposits outstanding, my withdrawals outstanding. In the middle section, I can see what my book balance is. And I can also see any batches that have not yet been posted in Sage 300 ERP. And if you create batches by RecXpress, you'll then see those batches listed in the Not Posted section. The third column represents information that will be coming in from your bank statement being utilized by RecXpress. So I'm going to go ahead and import a statement here. and we can see that it's inserted 50 records. As soon as I say yes to that, it goes about the matching process. So you can see it was matching by reference, and then very quickly there it matched by amount as well. And it's telling me that it's successfully imported 50 records. Now we can see the dollar value of what's been imported, the dollar value of what's been matched, the amount that's unmatched, and I do have an amount here that's also been matched with error. From here, I can go in and now view the details of the statement that's been imported. So this is a list of all of the transactions that have been imported by the bank statement, but I can also choose to see the transactions that are currently outstanding in my bank services module as well. So the top portion of the screen are the transactions that have been imported from my bank statement. The bottom portion of the screen is any outstanding transactions in bank services. And I know they're outstanding because they're sitting under this used column with no beside it. So currently I'm seeing all of the transactions that have been imported by the bank statement, but I could say I'd only like to see the transactions that were correctly matched by the software. And it reduces my list here and shows me an import status of exact matched, and these have been used because they've been applied now. As I click through these lines, you'll see the bottom grid change to reflect the corresponding transaction with each line that's available here. So those are my transactions that have been currently matched. If for some reason I wasn't satisfied with the way it was matched, I can simply say no, I do not want to match it that way, and you can see this line has now changed to no match. So I could remove it and apply it against a different transaction if I so chose to do that. I can see anything that's been matched with error, and we'll come back and have a look at that. I can see transactions that have been matched based on the amount or that have more than one amount. So a list of transactions that have the same dollar value, and then I can pick and choose how I would like to apply those. I can see those that have no match. So this is where you would come to do your manual reconciliation process. So I can say, if I have a look at this transaction that's come in on my bank statement, I can actually see that it applies to two different checks that were processed in Sage 300 ERP. So this would be my one-to-many. So if I scroll down on the bottom grid here, and I look for check number 13, check number 15, all I have to do is double-click to say I'd like to apply part of that $7,200 that came in on my statement against this check that was issued in Sage 300 ERP. It will update the amount for me, so it will show that I've matched $27,1882, and I currently have a variance of $4,500. However, if I continue to look at the comment section, I can see that that actually relates to check number 17. So if I come down to check number 17 and say double-click to say yes, I would like to apply that, we can see that my import status has now changed to many bank to one statement, and this has been reconciled now. So if I now move to that many bank to one statement, it'll isolate that transaction for me, and it will show me how it's been applied. I have the reverse available to me as well, so many statement transactions against one transaction within Sage 300 ERP. So I can sort these by reference, by date, by amount, by GL count, or category. I can do that in either ascending or descending order. And I can do the same here in bank services. So reference, date, amount, or description in ascending or descending order. And I can choose to only see outstanding transactions. So I'm not interested in seeing anything that's been matched. I only want to see things that are currently outstanding. And if I come along, we can have a look at, the category. I can also filter based on the category. So let's filter by deposits, and we can see that list reduce quite a bit. And now I have a smaller set of transactions that I need to worry about reconciling. So if we look at matches to deposit 13, I can come down to the bottom grid here, and I'll just scroll down and find deposit number 13. And then I just need to double-click to apply deposit number 13 against this transaction. Now, a few things happened when I double-clicked there. My import status on my statement changed to many statement to one, and my deposit down here changed to multiple, which means I can now continue to apply this. I can see the original amount was $5,574, and currently $250 of that is matched. But I can come down to the next line here and double-click again and apply that against that line. And I can continue to do that for all of these lines. And each time I do that, my matched balance will change until ultimately I've consumed the entire amount, and now I can say I'm satisfied with that. I've consumed the entire bank amount, and I've assigned it against 4 different lines from my bank statement. So it's that simple to go ahead with your manual reconciliation process. And so as I mentioned, the matched with error is actually, I'm going to clear out this category here, and we're going to say we want to look at all transactions right now. And it's showing me now my matched with error. So I can see that it matched it, but the amount, the import amount and the bank amount are actually different, and it's created a variance of $79.14 in this case. And my status is not an X any longer, it's an E. So it's actually showing me that there's an error on that line, and because it's considering this variance as an error. So this would be where you can go about making changes to the information that's on your template. If I click on this category button, it's actually going to open up sample is my template. So this is where, or this is how, you go about applying rules. So we'll change this category to deposits because there's a few extra lines of information here. And I can start to say, for this transaction code, this is how I would like it handled. So you do have a compare method available to you. So the compare method would be none, I'm just going to go based on the entry description. Or I can start to say, I'd like it to be equal to, and then you would fill in the compare description here. So equal to would mean that it must match exactly, and it will start with the first character in that compare description and look for an exact match. Or you can use a like statement, and you can say, I want it to have like courtyard, which means courtyard could be anywhere in the description, and it will get picked up based on that. But I also will set up, if I want to apply distribution codes, a GL account, and it will automatically pull in the account description. If you have distribution sets in bank services, you can assign those here as well. You can put in additional comments. You can set parameters around your taxes, how you would like to treat those, whether it's taxable or not, if it's involved with a tax group or a tax class, whether or not you'd like to include taxes in a transaction. You can choose to auto number, and by the way, you have the option of having a different numbering system for each type of category. So you can set a prefix and a number for each category. I can choose what the next sequence number would be. The entry type would decide whether it's a bank services entry or an accounts payable or an accounts receivable entry. If I choose accounts receivable or accounts payable, then I can actually assign it against a particular vendor or customer. And the auto allocate that I mentioned earlier, this is where I can say what I would like to do with that, whether I want to create a prepayment, whether I want it to just start applying to the oldest invoice first, whether I want it to search for an equal amount of the transaction, or whether or not to use the document number. And as I mentioned, optional fields are available here as well. So that's how you would go about adding rules on the fly. Once I've done all of that and I'm satisfied with what I've done, I can create a batch. And it will say, do you want to create a batch for RecXpress unmatched entries in this case, because that's what I'm looking at right now. And I can say, yes, I'd like to create a batch for those. So those would be my adjustment entries. I can choose to post entries directly from this screen. So whether that's by an entry number or a range of numbers, by a particular bank account or bank account numbers, a bank entry date or a range of dates. And I can also view my AP and AR batches directly from this screen. So I'm now in my AR batch list, and I can open up that batch and view particulars of a specific transaction from this screen. So that's the reconciliation process. Let's go back and we'll have, and then finally we would post your reconciliation. So that's how you would go about matching transactions to your bank statement from Bank Services. But let's have a look at some of the setup options that are available to you. Under the options screen, as I mentioned earlier, you can choose to automatically post batches, and you can choose which modules you would like to post those batches in automatically. Under the formats, this is a list of all the bank formats that are currently available in RecXpress. They are divided by region to assist you in finding what you're looking for. But as I mentioned, if the format that you're using is not currently within this list, we will have that set up for you by Parasoft, free of charge. The RecXpress transaction code, so this is where you would create your list of transaction codes, and you do this by bank format. So you can have multiple bank formats, you could have multiple transaction codes against those formats. The defaults is where you will initially come to set up we were using my sample one. This is my actual initial template. So this is where you would set up your categories, and you would fill in all the information about those categories and how you would like to handle each transaction code. You also have the ability under the category maintenance to copy a category. So you can say, this category A has the same transaction codes as category B, so with just a couple of clicks I can copy over transaction codes from one category to another rather than having to enter them separately. And lastly, under the security, you can assign particular bank codes against users. So you can pick and choose which bank codes a user has access to via RecXpress for Bank Services. Of course, as with any other module, you can choose who has access to bank services under your administrative services of Sage 300 ERP. So that's RecXpress for Bank Services. I'm going to pop that slide back up for informational purposes, but we'd like to thank you for taking the time out today to view RecXpress for Bank Services. And if you have any additional questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you very much, and have a great day.